The Future Sport Podcast is brought to you by 3Advance, developers of sports tech apps that are AI-powered and UX-focused. So if you're looking to create some apps for your startup or your sports biz calls for some artificial or business intelligence, you should check out 3Advance. They're incredible. Go to 3advance.com. That's the number 3advance.com.
Empire.
Really? The future is now.
It's very true, right? I mean, you're always accustomed to Asia leading in things like consumer electronics. But by and large, when you look at sports, the leading marketplace for innovation is not Asia.
That's Michael Proman, the managing partner of Scrum Ventures and CEO of Sports Tech Tokyo. As the Asian markets continue to emerge, this is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein. Venture capitalism is thriving in the Far East in the space that we cover, and we're going to catch up with Michael Proman about a variety of topics, bringing sports and tech to a new global platform. Plus, back home, Brad Mitchell is helping players transition to the new venture economy. He and former NFL player Marques Ogden join us for an interesting look at what constitutes post-career success. But first, the future is now. For years and years, Nielsen controlled the market by which they determined ratings. That's for linear television, and we're in a new era now. And there are some new players in the aggregation of audiences. Sahil Patel from the Wall Street Journal is following that, and it comes through the Overwatch League. What's going on?
So basically, the Overwatch League has decided to use a metric that a lot of all the sports leagues in the U.S. as well as broadcasters use to sort of demonstrate not only the reach but sort of the depth of the viewership, which is this average minute audience metric, which essentially calculates the average number of people that have watched any 60-second of a live sports broadcast. With the Overwatch League, if you want to be seen as competitive and as a rival to traditional sports leagues, using a metric like this kind of makes it a little bit more easier for people to understand and accept how big this league is growing relative to some of the more mainstream options that are out there.
And as far as disseminating the fact that they do have this metric, is this a play to show that they want to move the Overwatch League to other content providers, or is this a new business for them?
I think it's a little bit of look, if you can demonstrate that gamers and people who would watch this league would watch the Overwatch League on television, of course they would like to do more of those media rights deals, right? I think as far as I understand it, they already have a deal with ESPN, which means you can find them on ESPN, sometimes on the ABC broadcast channel. And if you can say, hey, our content can be watched by a decent number of people on linear broadcast television or cable television, that opens up more opportunities for them as more media rights deals come up down the road. But even the bigger option than that is simply just the work they do with advertisers, right? You have a lot of television advertisers who understand old school metrics like AMA and sort of just TV ratings. And if you can show them an audience in a way that they can easily understand and form apples to apples comparisons with other mainstream leagues, traditional leagues, it opens the door for potentially more ad revenue for Overwatch League, to working with more clients, especially non-endemic clients that don't necessarily know as much about esports and gaming as well. So in the near term and over the long term as well, it's the bigger plays for advertising. But look, it also helps with any media rights deals that might come up down the road.
I think this is interesting for sports overall, who are shifting in general to over-the-top mechanisms. Of course, linear is going to be around for a long time with the major leagues, but we're seeing this with colleges and we're seeing it in other places. And having a certain metric, and not by the way that Nielsen used to calculate, which was always a bit of guesswork, I feel may change the game for rights fees in general and for subscribers and the success of OTTs.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely fair. I think again, this is more just if you want to see esports, if you want to make sure esports is seen as legitimate, as worthy of consideration, as a potential. Maybe not now. Obviously they're not doing Super Bowl numbers or even Sunday Night Football numbers. But if you think that at some point this is going to be something that you can say is a legitimate alternative to a traditional sports, to a mainstream traditional professional sport, you got to use a metric like this, right? It simplifies things. It makes it easier to do certain types of transactions and to communicate the health and sort of the growth of the league. So in that way, it's a very just forward-thinking move by them.
Sahil Patel from the Wall Street Journal. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next, Michael Proman, CEO of Sports Tech Tokyo, on the vast globalization of sports and innovation. This is the Future Sport Podcast. Our guest this week is Michael Proman, who is the managing director at Scrum Ventures, which is an early-stage venture capital firm, and he is the person who oversaw the development and the execution of Sports Tech Tokyo, which is a mentor-driven studio program aimed at connecting cutting-edge sports technology startups and all stages of revenue-generating opportunities. So you are literally doing everything we talk about in this podcast, Michael. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Bram.
Most of the time we have a company that's trying to find revenue-generating opportunities, or we have the venture capitalists who are looking for this. You are kind of in the middle of all of it.
Yeah, it's a pretty unique position, I would say, and it's one that I'm kind of humbled to be leading. When we got started with this proposition just over a year ago, what we didn't want to create was just another accelerator, right? The world doesn't need another sports tech accelerator. I wanted to solve real-world problems, and coming kind of from the startup world, having started companies and been on management teams of others, there's no shortages of problems, I would say, in sports tech. So we wanted to kind of dig right in and solve some of those problems.
Could you be specific about it? Like, what is a real-world problem that you guys are trying to address?
Yeah, absolutely. I think valuations are out of control. And the reason for that is that there's very little or stagnant top-line growth. If you're a CEO of an early stage company, whether you're sports tech or any other tech, right, you're kind of in perpetual raise mode. And that's always good to be in. But at the same time, your business has to have a real revenue generating model. And there need to be fundamentals at play. And I think I was just kind of seeing the erosion of that a lot in sports tech recently with just silly valuations. And so what we wanted to create here, Bram, was a program that enabled companies to realize those opportunities at the top line, so that when we wanted to come to them for growth capital, seed rounds, A rounds, whatever it might be, that these were real conversations. We weren't wasting anybody's time.
So in what sectors were the valuations, in your opinion, inflated? Was this in the general marketplace, wearables, that type of technology? Where were you seeing this?
I think it's broad-based, right? I mean, we focused this program across three core areas of focus, one being athlete performance, one being stadium experience, and one being fan engagement. So, and then we broke those down 13 different ways, right? So it really didn't matter across the board. We were seeing that. And I think one of the areas that we felt we could make an immediate and direct impact was Asia. And in Japan in particular, right? So we call the program Sports Tech Tokyo. It's a little bit of a misnomer because, quite honestly, this is much more of a global program, and it's one of helping early-stage companies across the board find top-line solutions and, in some cases, growth capital. As you probably know, APAC in general, Japan in particular, is a completely underserved marketplace. Why is really because it's a relationship-centric region. And it's extremely difficult sometimes for early stage companies, any companies for that matter, to get a foot in the door and start generating revenue in that region. So we felt that with strong partners, and we're very fortunate to have Dentsu as kind of our primary and core partner in this mission, along with partners like Itochu Corporation and SoftBank and CBC and Microsoft and Sony Music, that we could actually make a meaningful impact and a difference. So we started here in Tokyo. As you know, Rugby World Cup is currently going on in the region. Next year, the Olympic Games. The next Olympic Games after that will be taking place on Asian soil in Beijing on the winters of 2022. And there's just so much growth in that region that's where we wanted to put a stake in the ground and say, let's be that gateway for the startup community into a region with unlimited and unquestionable growth potential.
You know, what's interesting about that is that, like in so many other sectors and not sports tech, Asia is known for innovation in whether it's electronics or automobiles.
Yep.
So that's very strange that you're saying that they were having a hard time getting their place in the marketplace when in all these other sectors, they've been leaders in the marketplace.
Yeah, it's very true, right? I mean, you're always accustomed to Asia leading in things like consumer electronics. But by and large, when you look at sports, the leading marketplace for innovation is not Asia. It's really been seen as a North American and even Western European dominated conversation. When you look at kind of where sports tech startups are coming from, we're fortunate to have 159 companies in our community. Over half of those are coming from North America. And we had hundreds of applications from around the world, and the ratio was pretty much balanced, right? It was very similar. So what we're now seeing right now is that, companies are spread out, and trying to extract revenue in certain regions it has become more and more of a priority.
Let's talk about esports a little bit. I know that is a big priority for what you're doing, and clearly the engagement around the world is just exploding. Can you kind of take us through where you see that going over the next 1 to 5 years?
Yeah, well, it's probably the short answer is up, right? It's you see all these tailwinds right now within this space, and just to think that 5 years ago, esports, I don't think 1% of the population even knew what esports was. This is such a fascinating growth story, right? Very rarely do you see things just kind of come into focus and then just shoot out like a rocket ship. We've defined esports within our fan engagement category, the 3 that I laid out for you, and we're getting all types of companies, right? Companies that are monetizing the engagement of fans, companies that are monetizing the downtime of esports athletes, right? Companies that are helping, quote unquote, the recovery process, right, for those athletes. So there's such a massive industry, and now you see a lot of the rights holder community, teams in particular, right, that are embracing this, and whether they have their own teams or investing in other teams. What's really ironic is, about 5 years ago, franchise values for MLS franchises, right, were less than what sport franchises are today. You look at here in my backyard, Bram, the Minnesota Vikings, just bought a Call of Duty franchise earlier this summer. What they paid reportedly was much more than, again, some of those MLS franchises were a few years ago. So it just gives you a sense for where the growth is happening.
That's amazing. Obviously, analytics and biometrics are a big sector as well. And I don't know if we're going to get into the complications of dealing with literal professional athletes, because there's HIPAA laws and all sorts of things that they need to navigate with their unions and the leagues to figure out how this will be utilized, who will have that information, et cetera, et cetera. But clearly, there's a huge burgeoning space amongst athletes worldwide that aren't professionals. Can you kind of talk about where that is heading right now?
Sure, I can speak to it on the athlete side, and then I think the bigger opportunity, arguably, is on the fan side, the stadium experience side, right, and how biometrics are really just changing the entire fan experience. I think you touch on it. Let's start from an athlete perspective, right? The biggest things, in my estimation today, and the biggest opportunities are in the categories that I call recovery health, things where things like hydration, things like sleep health, mental health, dietary health, looking at things that are going to make an impact off the court, off the field, off the rink, right? Those are all categories, and what I like about them is it's not just for elite athletes, right? It's stuff that you and I both need too, and the general population needs. You talk about hydration, right? There's a company that we work with called Kenzen, in our sports tech community here. And their focus, isn't really even elite athletes. It's industrial workers. It's the elderly, right? It's pregnant women. It's people who genuinely need this because this is a life or death issue, right? And so being able to take that one step further and localize it in sports to me, that's a very compelling value proposition. And so the data and the analytics and the biometrics that we're getting back, that's making a direct impact there. Taking it over to the fan side, this is kind of close and personal to me. I used to run business operations for a company called FanCam. You may be familiar with them. They've installed high-resolution cameras in a number of stadiums and arenas around the world. Really, really innovative company, right? They take cool pictures, but the reality is that producing a data set that is fundamentally going to change the way, in some cases, advertisers or brands engage with fans. So a good example of that is look at a company like Fanatics, right? They could tell you right now what's the top-selling New York Knicks jersey. They have all the data on that. But what they don't know is how that jersey is represented on a nightly basis at MSG, right? So if you're taking a super high-resolution picture, and not just one, but multiple pictures over the course of a game, and you can tell me kind of, okay, what is that top jersey tonight? Is it the home? Is it the away jersey? How does that break down at a demographic level, right? So millennial females, what is the top jersey amongst their preferences? So imagine a fundamentally new data set now coming into play, and then them being able to leverage that data set for SEO purposes and being able to deliver the ad unit that is most relevant and applicable to that user. So that's really exciting stuff. But as you said, there's a big cloud of privacy going on right now. And so you have to be able to respect that. You have to be able to anonymize that data. And so I think that the difference here is really between facial recognition or facial detection, right? Detection, to me, is anonymized. It doesn't matter if this is Bram or if this is Mike, right? It's just this is a person. And to me, that data point is just as rich as actually identifying who that person is.
Let me get to one other sector with you. It's near and dear to me because it's the media field. And sure. You are describing this as one that is a top technology spot for investment. And, my overview of watching it, having been in it, literally in it for a long time, is there's a lot of people that see openings and opportunity, but they are still going up against giant monoliths as they try to navigate into the new digital world. Where do you see the proper place to invest in media properties?
Yeah, there's so many different entry points right now, right? I mean, you look at The Athletic, you look at kind of what's happening on that side of the equation. You look in broadcast, you look at some of the overlays, whether it be, there are a couple companies in our cohort, right, that do essentially virtualizing the whole broadcast experience. So instead of it being your favorite announcer, or if it's Chris Collinsworth and Al Michaels, right? Maybe it's Bram and Mike doing Sunday Night Football this week. Right?
We wish. So really, we wish.
What's that?
We wish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I can dream. Okay,
right.
Don't take away my dreams. But really trying to personalize the viewing experience, understanding where that's going. How does that have an impact on cost structure? As you know, some of the rights right now that these networks are buying into are out of control. And you can either decide, I'm just going to, do it and bite the bullet, or I'm going to actually try to run a fundamental business here and try to innovate as a way to bring my cost structure down. So things like Spalk and Sportcaster, as I mentioned before, they're helping those broadcasters in numerous ways. There are companies out there right now that are looking to overlay the broadcast with various data points. So another company we work with called Edison AI, they're out of India, right? They were just going through the TechStars program now, the Comcast Accelerator in Philadelphia. And they offer, imagine like MTV pop-up video for sports, right? They're providing real-time data and information as an overlay in broadcast. So there's just so much going on right now in this space, right? And I haven't even touched on any of the OTT kind of platforms, all of the content features, social or otherwise. You could spend a lifetime in sports tech, specifically in media, and still be scratching the surface.
Let's talk about World Demo Day, which is an event that's coming up for you guys. What is it about?
Yeah, so when we started this journey last year, and quite honestly, this time last year, if we were having this discussion, we wouldn't be discussing anything because this was a blank canvas, literally. We've essentially built a brand in just over 14, or not even 14 months, in about 10 months now, since inception. And it's been really rewarding because, again, what we wanted to do here was not replicate the accelerator model. In some cases, you could call this the contrarian approach, if nothing else, right? So when you think accelerator, Bram, you probably think super early stage companies, right? Pre-revenue or early seed stage companies. You probably think about relocating for a set period of time to a particular market. And you probably think about it and saying, well, now I also have to give up equity, right? And so we took all three of those things kind of off the table, which is very unique. And some people kind of question, what is it you're really doing here? Well, when you take equity off the table, let's start there. What ends up happening is this cohort, the interested parties become very stage agnostic, right? Because if you're a A or B stage company, chances are you don't want to give up any equity. But you know what? If I'm now telling you a narrative that says I want to give you direct and kind of unfiltered access to real world opportunities in a region that's highly relevant and growing, you're going to probably say yes, especially if there's no downside. And so that's how we were able to engage with mid and later stage companies in this. This was not about relocating to Tokyo, right? We brought companies to the region, right, for what we call the kickoff event earlier this year. But this was really about curating meetings and experiences for them that were going to impact their business, and then be able to provide support throughout this last 6 months in a more virtual way, right? I'm okay being an arrow in somebody's quiver. I don't need to be the quiver itself. And I think that was kind of the mantra for us. So coming out of that Tokyo kickoff that I described, we identified about a dozen companies that we felt, and our partners, some of the brands I mentioned previously, felt were well aligned to some of the opportunities and arguably some pain points in the marketplace. And then those 12 companies were known as kind of program finalists. Now, we supported 147 other companies, right? We had 159 total. And what was most gratifying about that was seeing the progress and development of each one of those. We built a mentor community of over 100, I would say, kind of thought leaders across sports and entertainment and the investment community. So we really wanted to surround these companies, such a diverse cohort of companies, with a very diverse mentor team. This all kind of culminated, as you mentioned, in World Demo Day, right? So typically when you think Demo Day, you think, okay, great, we're going to hear 5-10 minute presentations from each of these finalists. The reality here was these were short, succinct presentations, but really in the context of a much broader day. I think it was an 8-hour day. It was at Oracle Park last month. It was fabulous. We had 300-400 people there, and really the thematic of the day was really about celebrating sports tech and innovation on a global scale. I mean, we had 23 different countries represented by our cohort companies. We had just a sizable, almost disproportional number of people coming from Japan, whether it be our corporate partners, whether it be media, otherwise. So this was really kind of, again, that celebration of the cohort itself.
It's all really cool. Michael Proman is the managing director at Scrum Ventures and is overseeing the development of Sports Tech Tokyo. Thanks, Mike. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Up next, a former member of the George H.W. Bush administration is helping current players learn to succeed in tech and business post their playing career. This is the Future Sports Podcast. So let's take a minute here to thank our friends at 3Advance. These guys are ranked one of the nation's top app developers, but that's not all. They've helped grow a bunch of sports tech startups like Team Builder, T-Box Tour, and in-game fantasy, but they're also experts in user experience, cloud APIs, and artificial intelligence. So if you're looking for a dev partner to bring your future sport tech to life, look these guys up. Go to 3advance.com. They're the team to make it happen, and advance you will. That's the number 3advance.com, and tell them Future Sport sent you. Our guests this week are Brad Mitchell, founder and board chairman of NAPSA, the National Athletic and Professional Success Academy, and one of its success stories, former NFL player Marques Ogden. The name of the organization speaks for itself, so it's nice to have you both here. Thanks for joining us.
Great. Thanks so much, Bram, for taking the time to talk with us today. Appreciate it, man.
Brad, let's start with you. What are the goals of NAPSA?
It's really to reveal hidden competencies that former NFL players have, skills and knowledge that they don't even know they have, and apply that in the next phase of their life, whatever that career is that they move into, they transition to from playing in the NFL. So it's not so much really teaching anything new or teaching business competencies, if you will, from a traditional business perspective. Rather, we're revealing existing business competencies from a football perspective. So it's really just to unleash this massive human potential that former athletes, former NFL players have to their next challenge. That's what NAPSA is about.
Could you give kind of an example of what you mean by that?
Sure. So, for instance, most NFL players began playing football at the age of 5, the age of 10, and they had basically a lifetime of practice, preparation, and performance. So what we as sort of fans see on the field is sort of the end product of all the work that goes into that, kind of behind the scenes, the film study, the identifying schemes, recognizing down and distance tendencies, pre-snap reads, all these kinds of things that are common competencies that are developed in football, and we help translate those to business competencies, things that we work with every day in the business world, Bram, like pattern recognition, scenario planning, competitive intelligence and assessment, situational awareness, sense making. Those things that the players have learned how to do, they just didn't realize they were learning how to do it.
Marques, I assume this clearly you're working with this organization. This resonates with you. Can you kind of discuss how you see that pattern and line of thinking from the viewpoint of the athlete?
Well, like Brad said, as an athlete, you have been trained your whole life on how to play football, from film study to technique to getting that edge on your competition to trying to win the game. It's the same thing, Bram, in corporate America. You're always analyzing the competition, like Brad just said, situational awareness and analysis. You're always trying to figure out what's the pattern of people you're trying to work with, pattern recognition. There's so many overlapping correlations between sports and corporate America. But where the athlete struggles, and where I can tell you from my standpoint, I struggled before I got with Brad and NAPSA, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand that looking at film study is pattern recognition basically, on the same level in corporate America. I didn't understand that analyzing a playbook full of your competition was just like competitive analysis and looking at who you're trying to work against or trying to get that client to work with you. So as a keynote speaker, like I'm doing today, Bram, executive coach, trainer, a lot of things that I've learned from NAPSA has helped me drastically in my career after the NFL and after life after football. So from the athlete standpoint, it's a great way to get the knowledge broken down in a simplistic way we can understand that we've been trained our whole lives to understand, and then take it back to corporate America brand and have great success.
You know, we've talked to a lot of athletes. More and more and more, they're getting involved in a number of different things, and investment in startups and all of that seems to be something that is of great interest to a number of the players out there. And I know, as I read in your background, Marques, that you were entrepreneurial while you were playing. You had ups and downs with the businesses that you were in. How did this kind of help you as you exited playing professional football?
Well, Brand, what it did for me is it made me realize that just because football was over doesn't mean that my life is over. And you're so correct. I got an email thread from Ryan Neese, who was a former player with the Bucks. He's the son of Ronnie Lott, and he was welcoming Austin Hillenmeyer into the group that we were doing some things with. And it's just amazing to see guys like Ryan, guys like Austin, like you said, that are doing great things after football. But we need to see more of that. We need to see guys like Ryan, like Austin, all these guys that are doing great. We need to see more of that, because I think it gives players that hope that if they're struggling after the game is over, which is totally natural, that there is life after. And that's what NAPSA is all about, Bram. It gives you that confidence. It gives you that boost that your skill set from football can be beneficial and they can be monetized in the corporate America space.
Brad, for you, is part of this, and you had mentioned for anyone who got to this level, all of their focus and attention was likely on this track as they ended up making it to the NFL, which is unusual. Are you trying to help them see where their other interests lie or allow that to manifest in a natural way?
Yes, that's exactly right, because no matter what they want to do next, whether it's corporate America, entrepreneurship, startup, teaching, a lot of guys go into teaching and coaching and those kinds of things. So it's helping create that awareness and reframing their experience in a different way. And and I just love working with this group of people, and it's been so interesting because when we first sort of came up with the idea, we really thought it would be kind of targeted at guys just out of the league. Maybe, you know, the average career of obviously in the NFL is about 3 years now, so 27-year-olds, 28, 30-year-olds. But what we found doing this, the age range, we've worked with people from age 24 to 51. So a huge age range, and we've worked with practice squad guys to 10, 12-year veteran Pro Bowlers. So it all depends on where that particular player is, and the innovative program that we built, the platform that we built, meets the player where they are. That's really critical, because they all come from, you know, different places. They've had different experiences. And it's kind of creating that awareness of what is possible. It's very much an inside-out approach. It's not a quote-unquote business school approach. So that's a big part of it, Bram. Just like you said.
Marques, for you, and if you could go back to your playing days, and clearly you went into business while you were doing this, so you saw the end of the line, and there was going to be life after football. You had to figure out what you wanted to do. Is that commonplace? Do you know what you want to do? Do you need something competitive about the thing that you're going to enter into when you're done playing? Like, what are the factors that get you interested in what you want to do?
Well, honestly, Bram, you don't see a lot of that from guys that are playing because you're so laser focused on your career. But where I was different was I had a brother who was ahead of me, who was in the Hall of Fame, who taught me a lot. Then we had a father who raised us as a single parent who talked about education and life after sports. So what was different about my situation was I had that raising in the home from birth about that. Now, while I was playing, of course, I had my brother to give me some advice, things like that. But the CBA didn't form these type of things until after 2013 to give guys that real opportunity. And you're seeing it more today. In my day, it wasn't very often players were looking at it. Now, in today's era, guys are seeing more opportunity beyond the game because there's more resources. But again, It all depends on the player's real desire to get that education, to get that knowledge. Like we all have a coach. Like Brad is my coach. NAPSA has coached me. I've learned from things. I had a coach in football. Anyone that understands the importance of getting this education and having a thing like this is what makes NAPSA so great. There's nothing out there like this that can give these guys, like you said, that can meet them where they are. And that is the key. When you can meet a player, Bram, where they are, the likelihood of them engaging you goes through the roof. If you try to give them a cookie-cutter program that basically is going to have a bunch of people come in and they're not going to meet at the same level, that's when you don't have that player really getting engaged. So that's why I really love what NAPSA is about. They meet the player where they are and then build from there. So, again, Bram, today you're seeing more guys thinking about life after football because there's just more things out there and available for them to get their hands on.
And the brother you're referring to, of course, is Jonathan Ogden, who was the great Ravens tackle, who had a fantastic career and ended up in the Hall of Fame. Brad, I want to talk about your background here for a moment. You helped generate revenue at AccuWeather, right? And you served under George H.W. Bush as part of the transition team at Science and Tech. I mean, that's a really interesting background to be doing what you're doing now. So how did you get here?
Yeah, great question. I've had a very nonlinear career, Bram, and done a lot of different things with different types of people and always working with great people. I mean, for George H.W. Bush, worked on his President 41, worked on his White House staff. And this really brought me, all of that experience, sort of diverse experience, brought me to this place. Because what I've been about, what gets me excited in the morning is helping people realize their full potential, whatever that may be. And my perspective looking at football, when I started thinking about it, and kind of my academic background in engineering and business and government and public policy and science and technology, it was like, okay, these guys, everybody wants elite performers. And former NFL players, former elite athletes generally are elite performers by definition. If you do not perform, you are not there, right? So the people that we worked with in this through NAPSA, the NAPSA intensive experience, they're just so high achieving, high potential people. They've got the character traits, they've got the competitiveness, the resilience, the goal orientation, the coachability, really. So it's working with elite performers, and that's what I like to do. And if we can marry those character traits that I just sort of talked about with their understanding of competencies, skills, and knowledge that I've had an opportunity to see in a variety of different venues over the course of my career, wow, what a powerful combination that is for our society, for the economy, for that individual. It's just an exciting group to work with. And the other big thing that just sort of blew away my kind of expectations, sort of putting this together, was these guys have learned how to learn. I mean, when you need to come in and learn a new offensive system, say with a new coach, or you need to learn a new game plan for 16 or 17 weeks successively, it's an incredible achievement just to be able to learn to do that and then perform it at such a high level, week to week. So it's been the most rewarding part of my career, and I've had some rewarding parts of my career, frankly, with working with different people. But this group of folks is just people like Marques and Michael Robinson, who was my original thought partner on this. It's just been terrific.
Brad Mitchell is the founder and board member, and Marques Ogden is a member of the National Athletic and Professional Success Academy. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks so much, Bram. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
That will do it for us this week. Remember, the future is now. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein. The Future Sport Podcast is brought to you by 3 Advance, developers of sports tech apps that are AI-powered and UX-focused. So if you're looking to create some apps for your startup or your sports biz calls for some artificial or business intelligence, you should check out 3 Advance. They're incredible. Go to 3advance.com. That's the number 3advance.com.